Milwaukee, October 14, 1912. A gunshot rips through the night. The crowd screams. A former president is shot point-blank in the chest. Every doctor in that crowd expects him to collapse. Instead, he reaches into his coat, pulls out his blood-soaked speech, and walks onto the stage anyway. The room goes dead silent as he addresses them. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know whether you fully understand that I have just been shot, but it takes more than that to kill a bull moose. With a bullet in his chest, he speaks for the next 90 minutes. We often view this as a moment of innate, superhuman grit, but the man standing on that stage wasn't born a bull moose. He was born broken, and he spent his entire life manually engineering his own resilience. Theodore Roosevelt was born into immense wealth, but his childhood was defined by a desperate struggle for oxygen. He suffered from chronic asthma so severe that it regularly pushed him to the brink of death. There was no medicine. On his worst nights, his parents took him on frantic carriage rides through the freezing night air, hoping the cold shock would force his lungs open. When he was 12, his father sat him down with a blunt warning. He had a brilliant mind, but a frail body, and the mind could not go where the body could not carry it. He told Theodore he must make his body. Roosevelt took that mandate as a mission. He began an unglamorous, multi-year grind of weightlifting, boxing, and hiking. He pushed his weak lungs further every single day, slowly overriding his physical limitations through sheer volume of effort. By the time he reached Harvard in 1876, the boy who once gasped for air was out hiking and outboxing classmates who had been healthy their entire lives. He had proven that a body isn't a fixed fate, but raw material to be shaped. By his early 20s, Roosevelt had built a life of both political success and personal joy. He was a rising star in New York and was deeply in love with his wife Alice. Everything shattered on Valentine's Day, 1884. He rushed home through a thick fog to find his wife dying of kidney failure. In a room down the hall, his mother was also dying of typhoid fever. They both passed away in the same house, just hours apart. The psychological void was so total that Roosevelt walked away from his political career and even his infant daughter. In his diary, he didn't write an explanation. He drew a single, heavy black X and one line: "The light has gone out of my life." He fled to the Dakota Territory, to the Badlands. He chose a life of isolation and brutal physical labor, working as a rancher in a landscape that was as unforgiving as his own grief. He earned his grit through events like the pursuit of 3 armed boat thieves. Roosevelt tracked them down an icy river for days in freezing conditions, captured them, and then personally marched them 40 miles overland to face a proper trial. The Badlands didn't cure his loss, but they hardened him. He returned east as a man capable of absorbing massive psychological damage without breaking. His energy now seemed uncontainable. He tore through roles as New York's police commissioner and assistant secretary of the Navy, cleaning up corruption and modernizing the fleet. When war broke out in 1898, he resigned his desk job to fight. He organized a volunteer cavalry known as the Rough Riders and personally led a charge under heavy fire in Cuba, becoming a national hero overnight. That fame carried him to the vice presidency, but Roosevelt didn't reach the Oval Office by winning an election. On September 14, 1901, President William McKinley was assassinated, making 42-year-old Roosevelt the youngest president in American history. He utilized his engineered energy to disrupt the status quo. He dismantled massive monopolies and created the U.S. Forest Service, protecting millions of acres of public land. This gold medal represents his reach as a global statesman. Roosevelt mediated the end of the Russo-Japanese War, becoming the first American to be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. By 1909, he had successfully constructed an unstoppable public persona through a relentless volume of action. In 1912, he broke from his own party to run for a 3rd term under the New Progressive banner. It was a move that challenged every existing political tradition. This schematic shows the exact physics of the assassination attempt. The stalker's .38 caliber bullet was on a direct path to Roosevelt's lung, but the bullet was intercepted. It had to pass through a 50-page folded speech and a steel eyeglass case. These objects absorbed just enough energy that the bullet stopped in his chest muscle rather than piercing his lung. Using his experience as a hunter and frontiersman, Roosevelt clinically checked his own cough for blood, When he saw none, he knew he could survive. He was driven straight to the auditorium. Standing before the crowd, he pulled back his coat to reveal the blood-soaked shirt, a calculated performance from a man who knew exactly what his body was capable of enduring. The man who survived that bullet was the result of every previous hardship. He was the child who refused to stop lifting weights, and the widower who refused to let grief end his story. The assassination attempt didn't generate his courage. It simply revealed the person who had already survived the carriage rides, the Badlands, and the loss of everything he loved. Roosevelt's story suggests that resilience isn't a biological trait you are born with. It is a structure you must refuse to stop building.